What's going on, guys? John here with you. It is August 20th, 2021. I know a double upload on Friday. I'm getting off my ass here and doing some work on a day that we're supposed to be celebrating Madden Day, Madden 22, the release on August 20th. I'd much rather be playing NBA 2K22. But that's besides the point. I will be talking about another game today here from the EA Sports Library. NHL 22 finally has some news and information. This is from Stephen Ellis of Sports Illustrated. I will go through this with the good and the bad and the ugly and wrap it up in a neat little package. So by the time I upload this on Facebook and Twitter, if you do have any questions in the coming days, hit me in the comments section and I will get back to you with as much information that I know as possible, and we will talk about this going forward here. So the release date for NHL 22 will be October 15th, 2021. That's just shortly days after the start of the 2021-22 season on October 12th. So likely, going forward, the second week of October will be the new release window for the NHL games rather than September in the past, as it usually been in the second week, probably because of the shortened NHL seasons and COVID and things like that. October 15th or the second week of October will probably be the new times that the annual game will be released every year. So this is coming out on PS4 and PS5, Xbox One, Series S, and Series X. There is still no PC version to speak of, and there hasn't, and never been, and never will be a Switch version, but there is no PC version to speak of. So when we talked about it before, it was NHL 15, right, with the EA Ignite engine, trying to give you some light in terms of what next generation hockey will be. That was the big tagline, and all it did was leave out pretty much every fucking mode that people wanted to play on top of EA Sports Hockey League and all that. That was a put back in feature in NHL 16 to try to classify it as new. Okay? Now there's a lot of that stuff going into NHL 22, and we will go over this because this is part of the ugly here for me. And a lot of you would think that this would be good, because if you're not involved with EA's franchise first-person shooter Battlefield, then you will know nothing of the DICE's Frostbite engine. But they've also tried to use that first-person shooter engine from 2018 on FIFA and Madden. Using a first-person shooter on sports titles to run a game engine doesn't sound like it makes a whole lot of fucking sense, and it really doesn't. But that's what EA is going to do now. Rather than running a new engine, a brand new engine for NHL, they're going to run their old engine on Frostbite that's already going to be at least 4 years old now. So it just doesn't make sense to me. But in terms of what you will get, if you're not used to running this engine or playing these games and things like that, Madden and FIFA sometimes play like an absolute atrocity, especially Madden. That game's completely unbroken and unfinished, and yet people buy it all the time because of the NFL license and because EA is the only one that can make an NFL licensed product. That's just the way it is all the way until 2027. God help us all. But this Frostbite engine is going to have much better graphics than the EA Ignite engine. That is something that I can't deny. The game will look a lot better with improved lighting and objects bouncing off and more lively looking scenario. And it should be a lot more pleasant to the eye, but unfortunately, as I said, this is an engine that's pushing about 4 or 5 years old now. And yes, I know EA and the NHL series is far behind the totem pole. And again, as far as sales and all that stuff, it's always fourth. It's, FIFA's number 1, Madden's number 2, an unreleased NBA product that used to be called NBA Live is number 3. I'm telling you, that's still ahead of the NHL franchise. It's firmly in last place. But those diehards that love to play the game know that NHL hasn't been good since Xbox 360 iterations and PS3 iterations from NHL 14 to NHL 10. That was the golden years of the NHL franchise, and now NHL 22 with its first release on next-gen consoles being the PS5, the Series S, and the Series X will try to undo some of the wrongs that NHL 15 did from the previous iteration between PS4 and Xbox One. Because when NHL 15 came out, again, it stripped all the features away and all the games that you love to play. But again, here, I know this doesn't matter to a lot of you, but I do want to go over this anyway. Cover athlete will be Austin Matthews. Okay, Austin Matthews was on the cover on the NHL 20 just a couple of years ago. So what are we doing? Are we trying to sell PS5 units in Canada or Series X, Series S units? He was just on the cover. That's pretty fucking lazy. I mean, hey, Patrick Mahomes was on the cover of Madden 20. Tom Brady was on the cover of 18. Let's do a dual cover and put them on 22. Can we not always put the same cover athletes on there? I mean, for Christ's sake, people bitched about it last year when Alex Ovechkin was on the cover. All right, he was on the cover of 21, but previously he was on the cover of NHL 06. It's been a long time. I can understand that being the passing of the torch from PS4 to PS5. Granted, that makes some sense. But when you constantly have Jonathan Toews on the cover from NHL 11, NHL 16, to Patrick Kane on the cover the year prior, you know what? I guess they really don't care anymore. They just put whoever they want on the cover to hope to be able to sell copies in units and move it quickly. So another problem that I have with this game, again, it would have to stem from if you played Madden within the last few years, and I hope that you haven't. But if you have, you've known from Madden 20 the addition of Superstar X Factors. So when you're playing the garbage pay-to-win Ultimate Team mode, because it really is pay-to-win, I don't have to do this because it is, but when you're playing that game, there is a hint of Superstar X Factors. So something will flash on the screen. The player will grant superpowers in terms of either reading the zone or shedding a tackle or making a coverage read or having increased throwing power, stuff like that. But the problem I had with those X Factors was it really got in the way of the gameplay and it pretty much broke the game. It was in terms of EA trying to differentiate other players and make them more, to have them stand out, have the superstars stand out and compared to the regular players. And I get that. Granted, in principle, that sounds like it would work, but you have to put, pencil to paper, and when you're playing it in the gameplay, it's pretty completely broken, and it doesn't work well. So now that there's superstar factors in NHL, a direct copied feature from Madden, just like Madden's copied feature interface was from NHL last year on these next-gen consoles, but that's what they do there in EA. That's what they do all the time. So we'll have to figure out how this X Factor thing is going to work. Granted, we know how it's going to work as far as Austin Matthews being able to get some other stuff, or Sidney Crosby, or Alex Ovechkin, or some of the other big names on the game today like Carey Price and Andrei Vasilevsky, some of the better goalies that we have. We know they're going to have superstar factors that help give them special perks and bonuses. But compared to the perks and bonuses that you got from World of Chell, when you played and you leveled up and did stuff like that, just like how it was, but now under a different name in the last couple of years, those weren't completely broken. Those were just perks and stuff that you got from leveling up. But it remains to be seen now how these modes and how this will change, whether it's just a new name for perks or whether it will completely change gameplay like it did in Madden on the NHL side of things. So there are some instances of pre-order bonuses. I'm not going to sit there and talk about all that stuff because the hockey bags are completely useless and HUD packs don't matter unless you play Hockey Ultimate Team and things like that and other entitlements. Nobody really gives a flying fuck about any of that. So Seattle Kraken will be in the game. It will take them probably some time to go ahead and get the actual arena and get everything else in there, like they had to patch it in for Little Caesars Arena a few years ago for the Detroit Red Wings, but it will be in the game. But here's the really bad news as far as NHL 22, and I want to talk about and wholeheartedly stress why this is important for those that really aren't aware. There's not going to be cross-play for NHL 22, and GM Connected, a highly requested mode from NHL 13, will still not be in the game, but producer Clement Kwong said it's something that they're looking forward to in the future. So why is cross-play not being in the game such a damning point against NHL 22? Well, let me put it to you like this. You have a PS5 version, a PS4 version, an Xbox One version, and an Xbox Series version of the game. Okay? Those are four separate entities, and you need to treat them as four separate entities. So EA is making four separate versions of this game. It's not something I want to sit there and say, oh, they're working really hard on this. My point to you is, in that sense, there's going to be 4 separate markets, there's going to be 4 separate player bases. Meaning, if you're playing the game on PlayStation 5, as is a PlayStation 5 copy, you will only be able to play against PS5 users. If you're playing a Series console, you'll only be able to play against Series players, PS4 to PS4 and Xbox One to Xbox One. This is such a huge problem because the NHL player base is already the lowest it is in comparison to FIFA, Madden, an unreleased NBA game formerly known as NBA Live, and NHL. NHL is always last on the totem pole. There's not a lot of player base to be had. And as I mentioned before, from the last few years ago when we started to go into World of Chell and we started to change it in terms of players by division base, where it's Amateur Cup, Pro Cup, Elite Cup, and the list goes on, you can only play against people when you're in World of Chell or Club Play. If you're in Division 10, you can only play up to Division 7. So 7 to 10, 6 to 4, and 3 to 1. So not only do you have a low player base and a low player amount between 4 separate versions of the game, it's split a second time because when you're playing Club Play, you can only play people in certain division levels. Granted, EA mentioned that they wanted to do this a few years ago, as they've done, to try to keep it more fair in terms of having higher competition play against higher competition. But I've always argued in the basketball aspect of it, and I will talk about it in the NHL aspect of it, sometimes the Tampa Bay Lightning have to play the Arizona Coyotes. It's on their schedule. It's a free win. That's just the way it is. Sometimes the Dynasty Golden State Warriors match up against the Detroit Pistons. That's how it is. You play who's on your schedule. You don't only play a select few of stuff like that until you get into the playoffs. But that's what they've done in the last few years in the regular season. So again, having 4 iterations of the game, and again also splitting it a second time when you're playing Club Play, doesn't really do a lot to help the player base, because when you're playing Club Play, you're always constantly playing against the same people all the time, and it gets really fucking irritating, and it gets really boring. And a third caveat to why this is so painful. So, from NHL 18 and 19, when the games and everything else still worked without lag, you had something that was peer-to-peer. And I'm not talking about LimeWire, music sharing, or Kazaa and things like that from back in the day. I'm talking about just peer-to-peer gameplay where it was your connection versus your opponent's connection, and you knew you were going to have a stable frame rate, stable connection, and the game was going to be good and nice to play. So regardless if the game was bad, the game would still be stable and have you be able to do all the things that you want to do because it didn't lag. But now between NHL 21, 22, and NHL 20, you've had an iteration where it went from peer-to-peer to server-based, meaning that if there isn't enough servers there for NHL, they can't handle the traffic, and the gameplay is going to lag for either you or your partner or your multiple partners that you have in your club. No one is going to have a stable frame rate as far as playing the game, and lag is always ever present in these latest iterations, and it will continue to be. And I hope, between playing this closed beta, if I do end up getting this invite, I cannot share video information as it was last year. I still couldn't share any of that, but I will give you a lengthy write-up, and I will be able to talk about some of this stuff. I just can't share any video. But my hope is that they've done away from some of that server base and went back to peer-to-peer. Because again, not only was it split between 4 different consoles, again was it not only split between division types, it was also server-based. So you're playing the same people, it's lagging all the time, and you're not getting a chance to play against multiple different opponents, and the game wears thin very, very quickly. So yes, it's a new graphics base for those that aren't familiar with Madden and FIFA and Battlefield first-person shooter engine that this NHL game is going to run on now, which is completely crazy to me. Instead of building something from the top, they're going to go ahead and copy-paste because that's what EA does. But again, it's going to release on October 15, 2021, just days after the start of the 2021-2022 NHL season. It will not feature cross-play, and it's going to have some of the same problems that you had when it's a split-up player base based off 4 different consoles, and hopefully it's back to peer-to-peer and not just this laggy base that you've had before within the last 3 years of the game. So I want to talk about one thing that is good to me. And this is one of those things where this isn't going to matter to you if you don't play club play, but God help you if you don't, because it's one of the few things that's only good about this game. And compared to what EA was recently with the Ignite engine, and now going to Frostbite, with the Ignite engine, there was some problems with this game, and they've slowly been addressed. But yes, the gameplay has never reached the same pinnacle point as we talked about from NHL 12, 13, and 14. So going from 10 to 14 was probably, again, the pinnacle of what this series has always been. And what I always used to talk about back then of why I loved the game so much was the completely customized player builds. It's not just a preset cookie-cutter player build that it's been within the last few years. Back then, it was completely customizable. So you picked your player type, you leveled up, you got your grades, you got your cards, you were able to, as you leveled up, as you played better in the game, your player would progress, and you would get your grades, your guy would level up, and you would get your points. So you would end up with like 3,000 experience points or something like that once you got your superstar or legend card. I think it was Legend 3, whatever it ended up being. It's been a long time. You went from amateur to Legend 3. You made that grind by playing 150 games and by getting at least an A- in your player in the way that you played. So if you played better and you played at least 150 games, you would be able to get to Legend 3 no problem. Really, it wasn't any kind of a problem in terms of getting that card. It was a lot of fun being able to get to that progression and feeling like you had complete control of your player builds. So now with NHL 22, another new feature that they brought back in that was since NHL 14, Clapperton, the executive producer, I wouldn't say executive producer, but he's the one that gets all the information out there on Twitter for guys to talk about as we'll be getting more NHL information going forward in the coming weeks, says that EA Sports Hockey League's custom player builds are back. They've been gone since NHL 14, but they are completely back, and they will be also included with X Factors. So you will have complete customization of your attributes. Because the way that I talked about it and the way that I've done it before, within this next-gen game from before it was always wrist shot heavy for me, and it's still always wrist shot heavy. I know the terms of the way that you aim it, instead of aiming it to the right, now you aim it to the left. Big innovation there, but that's what they changed, as I told you about before. It was one of those things where in the old games from the Xbox 360, I would do heavy wrist shot to the left. But it wasn't just one of those things, well, he's cheesing or it's a glitch goal. That's what a lot of those people would say because they couldn't stop it. It was one of those things, if you got into the slot, you got into a drop pass, you made a good play, and you aimed that wrist shot in the corner, you're probably getting a good look if it wasn't, good defensive contest. Or if the other guys just weren't in their right lanes, it's probably going in if it was a good shot. And I loved those days, being able to pick apart the corners, because now when you're playing in these iterations now that you have in NHL, you miss the net an awful lot. And if you're not at a complete fucking standstill when you're shooting the puck, it's going to go wide or go over the glass and things like that. It's a little bit unrealistic in the fact that you always have to be at a complete standstill, but that's the way it is now. But back then, it was hiring high left wrist shots and pinging the corners and using the drop pass and getting the puck movement. Now it's more of just banging in the goalie and hope it goes in and trying to do some other stupid things to slide past the goalie instead of making it more about actual skill. So now that custom EA SHL builds are back and the players are completely customizable as far as their attribute points, it helps me to think, do I need to go back now, like it's been within the last couple of years, and just rely heavily on that one-timer? Or can I mix in more wrist shots? Can I mix in not having to bruise everybody with body checks, but use the stick check, use the stick lift, get in there and cut down lanes? Can I have more speed? Can I play more as a two-way forward with that 200-foot game up and down the ice that can play the lockdown defense but can also score the goals, as I love to be able to do? Can I do that now? Or am I pigeonholed as a sniper with only being able to have a good shot and being... I was never lost on defense because I knew how to play and do all the right things and be able to get by. but can I put more points into my defense? Can I make that actually matter again? When I use my poke check, can I get a clean steal? Can I get a breakaway? Or is the puck going to be completely bouncy and floaty as it is? But that will remain to be seen whether or not that changes it on the Frostbite engine. But my point to you is, if you have more attribute points on a certain set feature as far as your defense, as far as your stick lift, your speed, your stick handling, your wrist shot, and things like that, how will things change now that we have complete control of it once again? Will it be better or will it be worse? That's one of those things that I have to believe that's going to be better going into the PS5, going into the PS4. Some of that stuff, if you're playing on last gen, you will get to be able to still have the Frostbite engine, and you will get to still be able to have the new player builds that they're brought back in from NHL 14 new builds for your customizable builds. But I do want to close here with some complete bullshit. So, with dual entitlement, when you purchase EA Sports NHL 22 X Factor Edition, I want to get the price point right. I want to imagine it's at least $75, but normally it's $100. So when you purchase the X Factor Edition, you're going to be able to get the Xbox One or the PS4 edition or the PS4 to PS5 edition where you get dual entitlement. But that's only if you get the X Factor Edition, the more money edition. If you get the base game, let's say you got it on PS4 and you're going to get a PS5 soon and you want to play it on PS5, well, you're shit out of fucking luck. You're going to have to buy the same game again, or you're going to have to buy the X Factor Edition to be able to get dual entitlement. It's hidden behind a paywall, guys. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. A couple of years ago, when they were talking about some of this stuff, you could just get the game at GameStop. You could put the disc in, and then you could get a digital version of the game for free. As long as you had the disc and then take it back, you'd have the game for free. Now everything is entitled and hidden behind a paywall. So if you do want to get both versions of the game, you're going to have to pay extra money. Or, as I talked about, I will be telling you a little bit for the closed technical test, even though, again, as I mentioned, I can't give you video and all that stuff. I will be giving you my thoughts and feedback as far as this game is concerned. And if you really do want to play this game, as I've talked about before, wait until Black Friday, wait until Christmas for a price drop, because then you're not going to feel so bad that you wasted money and burned it out of your wallet. This is John out here signing off for NHL 22, a double video here for today as far as we've got some new news and things like that. This may not be my last video of the weekend. The Diablo 2 Resurrected Open Beta did release here today just a few short hours ago. I will probably get some video for that to you, and I will get some of my thoughts on that as well. So have a good one, everybody. We will talk to you soon. Peace out.